Greetings, everyone. This is Duke Violation. I'm here with a few different members of the community, and we're looking to do a bit of a hangout, get together. This is going to be very laid back. We're basically just trying to go over and re-comment on some of the things that were just talked about in the PvP hangout. The hangout of the Avatar was done by Portalarium, and the topics were beyond what we can cover in an hour, so we have said that if we find that there is traction, we might extend this out to 2 hours. We have quite a long list of things that we can talk about, but in the event that things slow down, we will probably cut it off short of 2 hours. But just wanted to give everybody a heads up. This might last up to 2 hours. So I guess for starters, I'm Duke Violation. Most of you guys know me. For those of you who don't, I have a couple of different sites that I've helped with. The most notable one is probably SodaWiki. I'm going to go ahead and get everybody else a chance to mention who they are. Why don't we start off with Amber?
Amber Rain, voice of Avatar's Radio, at least one of them, and the Chaos Queen of Arms for College of Arms.
And Andrew?
Golem Dragon, herald and heraldic artist of the College of Arms, writer and artist on Ultima Codex and a number of other sites as well.
And Siamano.
Hello, Skiamano. I'm actually a member of Order of Vengeance. I like to kill things.
And Unseen?
I'm Joe, Unseen Dragon, mostly known right now for the Soda Travel Guide, though I do a lot of Soda and Ultima themed Lego sets, some of which have been shown on various places. And I don't like to kill people, and I like bunnies and flowers.
And Tourniquet/Black Rogue, you want to introduce yourself, sir? Are you there, Mike? Okay, we'll skip on. Droxus, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So I'm a member of the community. Droxus, Ponderloptos.
And then we only have one more here left. Mold, do you want to go ahead?
Hey everybody, if you can hear me, I am Multigrab, guard captain for the Bear Tavern, and one of the guys orchestrating the Bear Brawl for the Bear Tavern.
Go ahead, Tourniquet, I see you got your mic sorted out.
Black Rogue, the infamous, a.k.a. Tourniquet, Battle Master of Gladiator Wars, at your service.
Excellent. So the invites here, for those of you who are wondering, the invites here are based off of the thread that I posted in the forums. I also talked to a couple of people from the College of Arms about joining this a couple days ago when I had the idea. So essentially, if you guys want to be part of this, this is not going to be the only one I do. I'm planning on doing these at least monthly and just trying to get together and talk things over. It's not going to be overly official. It is going to be something that we try to keep fairly low-key, so I'm not trying to go at anybody's throat. So if anybody wants to come in and talk, you should be able to present your ideas and have them well received. That being said, I'm going to kind of jump right in here. There was a lot of information. For those of you guys who missed it, this right now, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a link at the bottom of this video that will take you to the hangout of the Avatar that just happened with Lord British, Darkstar, Chris, and Fire Lotus. It was chock full of great information, where they are, where they aren't, things that they have and haven't covered. So I want to start off with kind of saying the things that we're not going to cover. So there were a couple things brought up. First, wands and staves. They're so up and down right now that we're going to kind of put them off onto the side. Skip over that. There's a lot of other things we want to focus on. Another thing that we're going to be skipping over on is bounty. Bounty hasn't been visited yet, so they haven't even messed with it. So there's no reason for us to really talk about it right now. And I think that might be it. There might be another one that we come across too, but I just wanted to kind of mention that for those of you who watched it that are here in the Hangout. First thing that I really wanted to get people's opinions on is we're going to kind of go in order like they did in the Hangout. And the first thing I really want to start with is reagents. The comment is reagents will work to balance against durability. The economic cost is the current thought. So right now, like in the downside of having a reagent is that if you don't have the reagent, you can't cast your spell, and you constantly have to buy those things, and there's that cost that's based behind that, and they want to use the durability, so in other words, the cost of repairs, to help balance the economic cost of combat between when you're casting a spell versus when you're swinging a sword and getting hit type thing. So repair is going to be disabled for R8. Their goal is not to have us have to grind to play while we're in pre-alpha, but anybody have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do.
Shoot, go away, go ahead. Just make sure, if anybody else did too, make sure you unmute afterward and chime in after him.
Yeah, so I think that was great. I think balancing reagents with durability seems like a very smart thing to do from an economic standpoint. But one of the things I think I heard Chris say, Chris Spears, was he referred to it in the tense of we're gonna balance that with damage. At least that's kind of the way I heard it, and I've heard it kind of framed that way on the forums a couple of times. So I guess I kind of have a concern about that. Like if we're thinking about it in terms of I've got this really big axe and I just killed somebody with it, but it's okay because my axe is going to be hurt, and it's okay that that person over there is dead, but the durability of my axe is hurt because I used it. That doesn't seem balanced to me. So that's one of the things I'd like to hear more about as we move through R8 and R9.
Well, one thing, the way I took the way that he was doing that is not necessarily that it's the balance of the fact that your axe took damage compared to killing him, but more or less the cost against reagents, where the spellcaster, the cost of killing somebody is those reagents, whereas the person holding that big axe, their cost of killing somebody was the durability on their weapon. So it's not necessarily the imbalance of having a super powerful weapon that takes damage, but it's that they will have a cost, the melee will have a cost of killing somebody as the caster has the cost of reagents.
Yeah, I hope that's right. I like I said, I've heard kind of variants of that throughout the last year or so, and even today it was a little bit unclear. And if that's exactly what we're talking about, I think that's great and that's perfect. But if it's kind of the way I laid it out, that's where I feel like that's not going to balance on a competitive level.
Okay, I have just been given the heads up that my camera is locked on Gollum, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up too that it's not letting me unlock from him currently. So I have tried to use the cameraman and turn on and off the ability to adjust that, and it looks like the Hangouts are just fighting us a little bit. So Gollum, you're in the spotlight for a few minutes until that gets sorted.
That's fine. I don't mind. In regard to reagents, it has been brought up in the past of the ability for certain lower-level spells to be cast and do damage, but adding a reagent would boost that to a higher level. But those reagents would have a much higher cost than the average reagent. So you still have the same thing where you're balancing the cost of reagents with the cost of repairing metal armor, leather armor, and each is going to have a higher cost than the other.
That's a really great example of what I would hope we wouldn't compare. Like it might be great from an economic standpoint, but from a competitive PvP standpoint, does that help anybody in the moment, right? Like if somebody pays more money so that they can do more damage, and is that going to help the guy that's dead?
Well, you also have to take into account with the reagents, there's also going to be the concept of rarity with many of those as well. Where
Right.
some are just going to be very difficult to find.
I was just going to add, not so necessarily related to PvP. I like the idea of causing melee to have a similar, money sink that spellcasters do. The challenge is going to be making it seem natural. Reagents, in most of our thoughts, I think, are kind of expensive, and if you're going to make casting 100 fireballs using all those reagents comparable to swinging your sword 100 times, repairs are going to get very expensive.
Right, and that's why the concept was brought up at one time of spells that work without reagents but get more powerful with them to help try to find that economic balance as well.
But at that point, to me, that kind of strikes me a little kludgy, and you're not going to have a similar mechanic on the weapon side. So either spells are going to naturally be weaker unless you're using reagents, or they're naturally going to be the same, and then reagents makes them more powerful.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't know much when it comes to primary and secondary mechanics when it comes to the combat part, because we just haven't progressed to that point yet.
Of course.
So outside of the damage value side, do you guys think that trying to use repairs to affect the economic side is a good idea?
Yeah, shy of numbers, I think it's a great idea. Obviously, we don't know numbers of what actually comparing everything, but the idea of it, I think, is a great way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's always been a frustration of mine, and probably what gets a lot of people to not use spellcasters is having to manage reagents and the cost of that.
Okay, so we're going to kind of skip on to the next one there. We got a +1 on that. Active combat is required. It's not going to be based about the white damage, so you can't just hit your target and put your hands behind your back like Darkstar did. So at that point, active combat is required. Auto attack being lower damage. You'll always lose if you just kick back. I think this is a no-brainer, but having the skill play in there, I think, is something we all want. I just wanted to bring it up to give anybody a chance to argue or comment on that.
This is something I'm very strongly about, and why I'm happy that I get to sit in here. I believe that the one thing we've all enjoyed, I can only speak for myself, however, but I think we all did enjoy it in such games as UO, where it actually took skill to be able to do anything. It's nice to see them bringing it back, unlike so many other places where it's like, oh, the game's just going to play it for itself. I really believe that they're going in the right direction with this.
Okay, so we're not looking for bright pop-ups on your screen that say your cooldown has refreshed, hit number 2.
Oh, hell no.
I
see that kind of stuff, I'm quitting right now.
I think most of us would agree on that. Of course, the issue with that always becomes that someone will develop a tool that'll do it, and then it becomes like an arms race.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that, but I wanted to touch on this, and I was going to wait until a little bit later to touch on it. I actually think that's where the beauty and I can't really put this another way besides my excitement around the cards and decks, the randomization of not what skills you can use, but where they're located and when you can use them. I think that really helps combat, because I can't tell you how frustrated I was in the later years of Ultima Online gameplay when everybody was botting even combat, and you could even tell the way that they used all of their abilities. It's just, you could see the botters right away. And then another big game I played was World of Warcraft. You'd go into Battlegrounds, and there would be 20 people on your team, and 5 of them would be sitting in the back walking in circles, and if somebody came in range, they would cast their whatever spell was on their first spot over and over again, until they died, and then when they died, they'd automatically click res, and then they'd come back and kind of walk a little circle, and then automatically click number 1 over and over. If they adjust that, then I mean they could easily do something to where certain spells have to have a specific target or can't have a target, so it's a lot harder to program those macro bots, if you will. And I think I'd like to bring that up and say, what are your guys' thoughts on that? The whole idea of using decks, changing out spells, and adjusting that gameplay to put the real life skill back into what you're about to do next.
I can speak as someone who has a little experience, but is quite terrible at PvP. When I hear people say, they want the skill back in it, my experience has been that skill generally is synonymous for able to click and remember combinations very quickly. Two things I cannot do well. So I would really be interested in a system of combat and/or PvP where where some thinking and strategy can be done, and a person can take advantage of skills they may have beyond simply being able to react really quickly to actions on a screen, where it's simply, as I said, speed and knowing what combinations to use.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about with the whole skill thing, is not just standing there. If you stand there, you're going to lose, which is what they were pointing out. And skill meaning, like, okay, you're seeing somebody attacking you, you're going to dodge, you're going to move, you're actually going to use your brains and your common sense to get out of the way instead of just standing there and taking it.
But I was saying, it's my experience that a lot of times that skill of dodging or reacting is really synonymous with like quick reflexes and things of that. And me being someone who has very slow reflexes, I'm terrible at it. Even if I may intellectually understand how to do it, I simply can't compete.
That's one thing where the deck system can bring a unique dynamic that a lot of games haven't brought, is the quick reflexes generally are, for example, just bringing up a Lorgoth on that, I played a Chamois, my Lightning Bolt's always 3, my Thunderstorm's always 1. So I can button smash that, knowing where that button's going to be. Where you have the deck system, it's going to have reflexes because you're going to have to see where different spells pop up, so it still is a reflex into it. But it'll also go into the strategy beforehand, building that deck accordingly, where you're not going to have an unlimited, all of your class abilities. You're going to have a preset deck and a preset stuff, and it's also going to be random. So you're going to have a mix of the quick button hitting, but also the strategy beforehand into building your deck accordingly, and so on and so forth. Where most games haven't had that, it has been just a hit the buttons super fast.
Okay, so we good on deck combat, or did anybody else have a comment to make?
I just wanted to add that I'm with everybody on that. The thing that I'm kind of interested in is, so far we've seen kind of the same bottom of the screen. I think it's 8 possible combinations, and they're kind of all just laid out like that. I'm wondering if this will evolve into placement, and maybe 4 can be allotted to defense, and 4 can be allotted to offense, or or maybe 2 and 6 or whatever, just so you have kind of some more customization that's available to you, so that you can be a little more defensive and a little more proactive against whatever it is that you're seeing on a regular basis. So if people are using Fireball over and over and over again, maybe you can customize your deck and the amount of cards going towards one part or another that allows you to do maybe a little more than we've seen so far. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and
I'm going to actually
go
jump in before we move on to the next one. I have a huge issue with this. I like how you guys are mentioning how the deck system removes the reflex part out for some people. I look at my younger brother who's going to be playing. He does not have the reflexes that I do when it comes to gaming in any way, shape, or form. And so combat, like, for me, is his #1 priority, and we want completely opposite things. And right now, combat for me has no sense of urgency, no sense of importance, no sense of meaning or satisfaction in what we're doing. And while it may be early in the iteration, even auto attacks have absolutely no meaning. I played all of R7 without taking much damage of any kind just by using positioning. I could farm the Lich in leather armor and starting weapon and not die once. And in my mind, it just seemed completely broken even at the point that we're at. Because there's no skill involved just putting an auto attack, sitting down and watching a Doctor Who episode, coming back and having won.
Yeah, I think that their comment earlier about how active combat is required goes to reflect how that's just a symptom of it being a pre-alpha. I really do think that that's going to be balanced out, and I make that comment based on the hangout that just happened. I don't think you got a chance to watch it, right?
I only saw about half of it, so I missed a lot of the early stuff.
Right at the beginning, there was a question about the auto attack power, essentially being able to just hit something and kick back and put your feet up. And Star said very clearly, this is not going to work. If you have a player that is attacking something and kicking back and going AFK and watching an episode on TV, they're going to lose against a player that is actually actively at their keyboard fighting. They're not going to allow that type of a situation to exist intentionally. I think that that's mostly a symptom of just the state of the game. And I was excited to hear that, and I figured you would be as well. So figured I would just regurgitate.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. It's still just that lack of sense of urgency. Even using the skills, there's just never felt that urgency. Like, I have to hit this key now to really help turn the tide of attacking any creature in the game.
So I kind of have I want to get to the next point, and then the point after that, I want to recover what you're talking about right now, if you don't mind.
No, go for it.
The next point is on camera control. Currently, the idea is that you have to control your camera, and it adds to part of the skill aspect of the gameplay. The question was based around automatically controlling the view from the camera, automatically controlling what you're looking at to help facilitate easier. Yes, I don't have camera control in the Hangout. Thank you, Peanut Gallery. Automatically controlling the ability to as soon as you attack something, you're looking at it, and it's in your field of view. If something's about to attack you, boom, the camera catches it, it's in your field of view. It takes out some of that importance of being a skilled gamer, where you know, hey, I need to go around this corner a little bit slow. I need to turn my camera. I need to check it. Okay, and now I got to turn around and check behind me. All right, no, I'm clear. I'm clear there. I didn't hear any footsteps. I don't need to look in that direction because they do have that 3D sound stuff going on, so I'm good to go out that way. Thoughts about camera control, the way that it's going? Something that I don't remember them exactly answering and touching on was motion sickness, but I haven't ever experienced anything like that. But yeah, go ahead, talk away.
I love the camera control, being able to look around corners and things like that. In games, I'm going to go back to picking one of my favorite series, the Hitman ones. It was so much fun to have to look around, check out behind you, and have that extra control where you can, as a very stealthy person, take advantage of your surroundings, positioning. That was the reason back when Richard did Tabula Rasa, I was excited. I was disappointed in how things ended, but it was an aspect of combat that took skill, but never so much that it set people apart from being, you know, amazing top-of-the-line people and those that would never bother. It was something that could be learned, and that kind of little bit of a tweak is enough to help push the game mechanics and core features of combat from just a mediocre level to something that is much greater.
Definitely, I would be completely against like a locked camera because, I mean, as you said, what if you have somebody hitting the front of you and having somebody hitting the back of you? How would the game decide which one, so on and so forth? I mean, I can't tell you how many times you want to be running this way. You know, let's say you're doing some sort of, you know, you're carrying an object you want to run, it doesn't matter, and you want to turn around and look behind you, and if you have a locked camera, you wouldn't be able to do that. Maybe not nobody's hitting you, but you still want to look behind you for whatever reason.
Being someone who, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut in, but being someone who is highly motion sickness, I suffer from it a lot. Having the cameras the way they are right now, where you have full control instead of having the camera doing its own thing, is really good for those that are in my situation, because you don't have the whipping around and whatever. I even have to pull my camera out from where it normally sits, because being too close up in first person kind of view makes me sick. So I like the way the camera actually is as it is now, and if they were to change it, I think it would cause a lot of issues.
Okay, so I kind of want to jump right into the next one here and give a little bit more time, because I think this is one of those ones that anybody who's played in recent gaming days, they know about the downfall of this potential spiral, this counteracting that could take place here. Stun locks and the mitigation of stun locks. So looking at ways to mitigate stun locks with skills such as Knight's Grace. So they've talked about the roots, and they've talked about the ability to stop it, and one of the things they did is they made it to where previously, and I actually made a joke to somebody else, previously I'd heard a lot of different people comment about how they beat the Lich really easily. And a lot of people complained that he was too hard. I'll tell you the easy way mode to beat the Lich in R7 was to sit there and cast roots. Every time it was off cooldown, he couldn't kill you. It was really easy. That type of an environment for any melee class would be a nightmare. It'd be irritating. And in PvP especially, stun locks are, in my opinion, frowned upon. But the way that they're dealing with it in Release 8 is they said they're going to double the cooldown time. So you have to have 2 people to be able to, I guess I would say, root lock somebody. And there's a skill called Knight's Grace that will help not only remove them, but also give you temporary immunity. So that being said, I guess I wanted a chance to kind of retouch on this whole combat thing. We know that line of sight's going to matter. We know that there are going to be certain types of stuns and root type mechanics in the game. Now we've also been told about a Knight's Grace ability that can help mitigate some of that. I guess, what are your guys' thoughts? Stuns, stun locks, mitigation, take it away.
All right, I'd like to jump in for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing that I really hated about Ultima Online when I played it was the fact that I would run around the house and a fireball would follow me around the house, which is kind of dumb, because if I have something between me and that fireball, then it shouldn't have been able to hit me, but hit that house instead. So obstacles, and I also think a fireball should burn a trail. It would just look cool.
Well, the issue you get into with that is, I mean, the trail obviously would be cool. The issue to get into with that with how much of that can you do without it becoming a first-person shooter, where if all the spells only went the direction they were going, it becomes a shooter game rather than this style of a game. And so it's the balance of the two. That's why it would be a good dynamic of having the ground-targeted abilities, like they were saying, the fireball in the chat or in the Hangout, if targeted on the ground. If you had those, a good mix of the two. You don't want everything to be specifically where it's targeted, and you want everything to follow. But a good mix of the two gives that element still, where you can run to dodge some stuff, but other things will follow you. But on the topic of stuns and roots and crowd control effects, it really comes down to you need to have some things that you're not going to be able to just be like, I'm immune to. And at the same time with melee, it hurts melee. It also hurts casters when a melee can get on them and not let them get away. They can't run from them because they are stun locked by that stupid rogue. It's got to come down to like diminishing returns, things like that, where one person can't just keep hitting the stun, but at the same time you want to give a unique thing where there's a group of people. If there's 5 people on you, if they all had unique type things, it makes a bigger difference when it still gives the, I'm trying to think how to word it. You want to give dynamic when it comes to a group setting, because you don't want this one person spamming a route hurt the other person's when they try to cast Root. You want to have unique abilities that work independently, but at the same time, you don't want to be spammed by 30 of them and it's constantly be stuck down.
I have to say, again, my limited experience, in PvP, I really despise any kind of stunning or rooting effect. I think except for escaping, I think it does nothing but cause frustration.
So what about this? I find a benefit to occasionally having the ability to do a stun, but I tend to be a little bit more extreme than everybody else, I think, on this point of view, and I'm glad that there are so many people here to say that, Violation, you're an idiot. Tell me what you think about this. Every type of crowd control effect can be cast one time in, say, a 3-minute window. And after you get hit with that, you have a blessing that makes it to where that type of an effect cannot affect you again. Or some sort of I've already been hit. So if you have 5 different schools of magic being used with their different type of crowd control effect, and they all hit the same guy, well, now you've got 5 on 1, and yeah, he's dead anyway. So let's get it over faster than it would have been. But if you've got 5 warriors standing on top of you that all use melee, so they're all going to use roots, so you can't run away, you know? But they don't have some of the other magic abilities that maybe some of the more magic-based users over melee users would have. Your blessing would stop you from essentially getting overpowered by spamming of the exact same skill over and over and over.
That is one thing that is doable. It would come down to how many types there are. Also, I more or less really dislike the ones that completely stop control of your character, such as, being stunned. Where being rooted, you at least can do certain things. Obviously, it limits melee more, so you have that issue. So crowd control effects such as a slow, I think, aren't as big of a deal, where things that completely stop the loss of, gives a complete loss of control of your character are much bigger of a deal. So maybe having different penalty where it's not just being hit by the same thing is always a big penalty, or limiting it to where you're blessed from it, but having a looser restriction on those.
Anything that takes control out of one of the players by definition takes skill out of the process, because
then you no longer can repel the attack with skill.
Yeah,
you're not in the game.
There have been various MMOs that have used the concept of diminishing returns on any kind of stun lock, rooting, slows, things like that, where if you hit with it once, the next cast upon you has not only a less chance of succeeding, but if it does succeed, a lower duration. World of Warcraft has done it, Guild Wars games have done it, I can go through a nice long list. But a lot of them have also gone the route of removing, like, the sap from World of Warcraft and other ones where you are completely
They got rid of
stuck
sap?
there.
Woohoo!
Well, no,
Okay.
WoW hasn't done that, but other ones have removed such similar skills for that reason, because they want the ability to do that. There's one, not Kickstarter funded, it's one of the other site ones, where they have a lot of those skills where it removes complete control, but then it uses another gameplay feature of you have to then, the game off the top of my head that uses a similar one are some of the zombie games where you have to use your movement keys to help break out of that kind of stun lock.
So keeping it in a Shroud of the Avatar feel and kind of applying it to the type of game that we're dealing with right now.
If you're using, let's say, an ice magic spell, you could break out of that with movement, because that would be very realistic. So you could look at
you could
movement
look
options.
you look at the ground and you have the ability to interact with your feet, and by interacting with them, it helps break you free.
Yeah, just little things like that. We're moving around.
Interesting.
What about another way of coming at it with, instead of diminishing returns, me constantly casting a repeated stun or whatever it be has an increased chance to fizzle. The more often I do it, it goes up those. If he talked about the 5 stages of it, and
we're going to cover that too.
Yeah, so it could go up that. Where the first time you get it, you're going to hit them. The second time, it has a chance to maybe just not cast, and then it has a longer cooldown. And then if you keep spamming somebody with a whole bunch of the same cooldown or whatever, that actually has a chance to hit you instead.
And with the deck system, that really helps balance the deck system well, so people aren't overloading one or two skills. They have to actually kind of expand a little bit.
Yeah, I like the idea of maybe actually expanding on that deck system and saying you can't have more than one or two root types cards in your deck. Go ahead.
If I may, I realize that this kind of effect is very common and popular in games, but what does it really add versus all this workaround you have to do to make sure it doesn't have a negative impact? I can't think of another competitive experience like game or sport, I mean, where a player has the opportunity to stop the other player from taking action.
Joseph, I couldn't agree more with you. I think that is dead on. And what I'd like to actually do is see them take it a step further by having it so that the person that is casting stun or root has to continually cast it. I mean, not cast it a whole bunch of times, but just continue to cast it to keep the lock on that person so that they are equally stunned or rooted, essentially. And there's a give and take there. There's a balance inherently in having the caster continue to lock down someone so that no advantage is given. You can't just lock someone down and then have a field day and start hacking against them.
Like a channeled spell.
Channeling.
That's interesting. I could see a pair of people going to town with that. Where one channels you while the other attacks you.
So another thing to do is I want to mention this. An outside person, Quetzalcoatl, has just messaged me and said they could have an ability and a skill tree that allows you to invest a few points into a passive skill that resists 80% of stuns.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
But isn't that just like kind of
goes back into having it just to mitigate it?
To kind of go with the why have it type things.
Exactly.
In PvP, there are a lot of times where, let's say, Violation's my healer, and which he's not going to be, but let's say he's my healer. I want to stop them from hitting him. Where if there's no crowd control, if there's no I can stop them, then I can't do anything if I'm not a healer. Like, I plan on having basically no healing spells, being as glass cannon as I can be. I can't stop them besides killing them, where sometimes you need that 2-second stop. Another idea, which they're already doing some things, is like, for example, in Earth, having a brick wall, where that's not necessarily cast on the player, but having it cast on a location. Maybe having more of those, rather than I stun you, you have some sort of area penalty where I cast something on the ground, or I put up a wall.
I really like that. I like the area penalty where you have, like, maybe roots instead of being targetable on a player is a spell that has to take a second to cast. You cast it on the ground, and it has some sort of like a growth come out of the ground, and if anybody walks over that, it works more like a trap, and it entangles them. Just a thought.
But I mean, that's kind of...
We've spent a lot of time on this. Do we have more that we want to add to it, or do we want to move on?
I'd like to add one more thing. What about if you're stunned and whoever you're running with can hit you and unstun you, but not damage you, just to unstun you?
Backhanded, wake up.
Exactly.
Well, one thing I'm going to add along the same lines of why have it is not only the stopping the healers, but and I know Star and Chris have both talked about this, certain higher level spells taking a longer time to cast and get off. If you can see that, let's say Amber off 30 yards from me is starting to prep casting her most powerful spell to just knock me out while Violation's keeping me busy, yeah, I want the ability to stop her ass. And any kind of interrupt of any kind, whether it be a perma one or not, is good. My favorite games for PvP had 2-3 second perma stops where you couldn't do anything, but those are very skill related, where you had to be careful with either being stealthy and not being too close to a player until you were ready to use it, or things like that. but it really helped those situations where something big was going to happen and you needed to either stop something or turn it around.
I think that's an interrupt more than a stun, and I actually agree with you on another level. I would say that one of the things I really liked about some of the abilities of World of Warcraft were you could pick how you put your silence or your counterspell or whatever it may be that you're using and your interrupts in, and if you hit them at the right time, there was an extended amount of interruption, if you will. So, for example, if she's in the middle of casting her fireball and she's got her hands up and you see the sigil above her head and you know it's coming and you look up and you go, interrupt. And it hits her for an interrupt before she's able to get that fireball spell off. All of her spells go on a global cooldown for 1 second. That's more than just stopping that spell. Now you've also given yourself 1 second of absolutely no damage in combat. Of course, duration doesn't matter. This is all so conceptual, but I like that idea. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it adds
Thanks,
a little
fella.
bit of the skill into it with timing, but the nice thing is if there's a longer time for someone to cast something, that gives you time to figure things out and not have to be, oh god, I have to quickly hit one now or I'm going to miss it, and suddenly everything steamrolls and you're done.
Hey, we actually have somebody new that just joined us in the Hangout. I want to give them a chance to say who they are and why they came in. Do you want to introduce yourself? Sealith? Talking to you, sir.
Hello, it's Selith. I was watching the video, and you guys were talking about, Amber talked about like having to use skill to fight in PvP. I mean, well, I'd like to know what you guys think about, like, I don't have the fastest reflexes in the world, so I mean, I'm one of those people who just stands around and takes it, like, and I try to hit back as hard as I can, but like I just don't have the reflexes, like for instance in World of Warcraft, to jump around like a hyperactive 6-year-old. So I just don't want to know what you guys think about that.
I think there should be a penalty for jumping like a 6-year-old while you're in combat, to the
Agreed.
point that if you jump while you're casting a spell, it self-interrupts. And if you jump while you're in the middle of swinging, you have a chance at like stabbing yourself in the chest and killing yourself. But that's just me because I like that little bit of chaos and rewarding people who play semi-correctly.
Love it.
One of the issues is you will always have reflexes are a big part because, I mean, that's combat. If you take 5 seconds to swing your sword and somebody takes 1 second to swing your sword. But if you have more dynamic in the game, which you have more abilities that you can use, it doesn't come down to who swings their sword faster. It becomes, he might be swinging his sword, but then I can cast this spell on him and stop him type thing. To the more dynamic there is in it with different abilities, if it all comes down to, for example, there's no crowd control, then all it comes down to is a DPS race. Then it's not really less skill. It is just, if anything, I think it would increase the who presses the buttons faster. The more dynamic there is, the more balancing there is between the schools, and having to put more time into your deck, not just this is the cookie cutter best deck there is. The more that dynamic there is in that, the more it'll increase the skill in it rather than the reflex.
See, I think that brings up a really good point, because one of the things that I would kind of piggyback onto that is that maybe not interrupts, but counters. The ability to, I don't want immunity, but the ability to stop something that you know is coming. I mean, again, I'll go back to Fireball. If everybody in the world is using Fireball and that's the way everybody dies, why wouldn't I be able to come up with a way to just say, well, today I'm not dying by Fireball? I mean, I think it's great to have timing, but a little bit of preparation ahead of time, I think, will go a long way towards people feeling like they're not just getting, destroyed by people that have skill.
Okay, so if we can kind of jump forward here, you guys okay with moving on?
I actually wanted to mention something on the whole stunning thing before we moved on, and that was how I actually really, really enjoyed the way it was done. Again, I'm going to go back to an old school game, Ultima Online. I was strong PvP in there, and but I also had a pattern of doing things. I like how they worked paralyzed in Ultima Online. You were paralyzed, but as soon as you took any damage, it broke it. And so, of course, my pattern would be paralyze, energy bolt, paralyze, and then shoot them full of arrows. But as soon as you took damage, it broke it, which it was handy for mages. And I think any kind of stunning should be similar. Like if they stun in here, one, you shouldn't be able to cast a spell to break it. That just does not make any sense. If you're stunned, you cannot unstun yourself. You can't do anything. But there should be a way that if you take any points of damage, you are essentially unstunned.
I would follow up with that and say I would be okay with not being able to break a stun if there was no direct castable stun. If they had the ability to give you the visual and physical in real life response to avoid getting stunned in the first place. Otherwise, everybody who walks up with a moon-based ability will always have such a huge advantage on you because they can stun you, and now you haven't thought ahead of saying, I'm going into an open PvP zone where I can likely get stunned. Let me put on my Knight's Grace ability. So now you got caught. They get the full duration of their stun to do damage to you. It doesn't make any sense for you to be able to come out already beaten up and have a competitive chance. It only makes sense that from that point forward, you're always going to be the lesser of the two opponents. So I would say I'm all for that as long as they make it to where you can visually avoid them on your own. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean, if you prepare before, fine. But if you're already stunned, you should not be able to go, oh, I'm going to cast this button and I unstun myself. I can't do anything. It doesn't make any logical sense. In an RP sense, and I am an RPer, it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to push this button even though I'm, like, unconscious. And suddenly I'm back to life or whatever. It just makes no sense.
Cool. So, armor affects focus. The exact comments were basic along the lines of that the type of armor you wear will affect your focus, casting success percent, the higher you go. So cloth affects it the least amount, and plate would affect it the most. So how you regenerate your focus, sometimes it could be the costs of things, the casting percent success chance, which plays into the different 5 levels of failure, which I did copy down so we can go back over. What do you guys think about that? How cloth wearers will automatically get a better regen on focus, even though plate wearers are using the exact same pool of energy?
I'm all for that.
Love it.
It reminds me of old school Dungeons and Dragons. The more armor you wore, the harder it was to cast spells, especially if it was plate.
Yeah, because plate wearers get the advantage of having plate.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of follow up with something. If everybody agreed with this, I was ready to kind of come at this with a different perspective. Right, but I'm going to take something from later in the Hangout and move it up a little bit.
Do you mind if I toss in
Yeah,
something?
did you notice that stamina, mana, energy, everything is actually focus? So your heavy swing could be affected by the type of armor you use. So there could be some sort of a benefit to having people in lighter armor running around doing swinging because their mobility gives them a better chance of using swords, thus mitigating the whole quote-unquote benefit of plate. So
Well, at the same
I
time,
don't know if it does that.
you also have a higher chance of dodge, which means you have a chance of taking little to no damage, just like plate mitigates the higher damage. So dodge versus mitigation, you start getting the same number game that many of us did, whether it be UO, World of Warcraft, and other games. It's that same kind of balancing act that they're trying to figure out.
One thing that I'd like to toss in is I like the idea of it. It would obviously, the devil's in the details. The nervous side of it is if you go too heavy on that, it's going to penalize the classless system by kind of making classes if cloth is always better. The idea behind it's great. I would just say definitely lean more toward the Cloth has abilities that favor, where it's less of you have a passive, you are worse if you're wearing plate at casting to a point. I think the idea behind it's good because it makes sense. It is definitely a good idea, but I'd definitely just be nervous on having too big of it because then you'll never see casters in plate.
How many casters in plate do we want to see? Like I'd like to see some, but not a lot. I don't want to see casting all kinds of spells.
Rather than having it be I definitely don't want it, everybody wearing it, because then there's no dynamic if everybody's wearing plate. That's why I think if they leaned more toward having abilities in each, cloth, leather, plate type thing, that it would cause more dynamic rather than, having a penalty, just don't make it too severe. Like if you said it's 300% more, whatever, obviously not lowering. But if it is like 300%, then nobody will want to wear plate because that's just too extreme.
Sure.
Just have it kind of an in-between where if you did more ability-based in each thing, it maybe encourage people but not penalize them, if that makes sense, to pick something else.
So the benefit of the devil in the details comment is I just wanted to mention that the numbers that were mentioned earlier, I was actually told were so liquid that it's not even worth bringing up the exact numbers.
Yeah.
So they are going to work on balancing that, I think. I just figured I'd play the devil's advocate for a moment and mention that hurting your focus actually hurts your stamina.
Okay, with that, I'm going to use Tourniquet for an example right now because he has a full suit of heavy armor that he actually showed up on. Now, allow me to ask you, if you were to do something really heavy damage or like something really strenuous action and it takes a lot of your energy, are you going to get that back as quickly as you would wearing something lighter? I don't think it makes sense that you would. So really, if you're wearing heavy armor, your stamina should come back slower.
Yeah, when you're wearing heavy armor, I'll just let you know that right from the start, I do heavy combat. So when you're wearing heavy armor, it does take a long time for you to regain that strength and stuff like this. The benefit of the heavy armor is the damage it can take, the hits it can take without knocking you over. But in turn, I also think that if you're going to be wearing heavy armor, you should also be a little bit more slower than if you were wearing leather armor or chainmail.
So for an idea, maybe not as penalizing the cost of something as much, but the regen and also the speed at which you do it. In the sense of, I had a train of thought and now I'm losing it. Were you going to say something, Joseph?
I was just getting ready to move us to the next point.
Go ahead, because I completely lost my train of thought. But more or less, for example, if you had the heavy armor, doesn't necessarily cost more to do in regen, but it had more abilities that were defensive, because that's what plate is for. It would not necessarily discourage any casters from doing it, but it would only be the defensive casters that did it. Where if you had a huge penalty to focus, that not even the defensive casters would want it, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense because when you have plate mail, there are limited weak spots in the plate mail. It's not just one big hit box where you have hit points in real life, if we're trying to be a little bit realistic. And that's the part that's been missing in a lot of games, is that you hit somebody anywhere and they take damage based on some numbers. And instead of saying, well, plate mail only has X amount of weak spots, you have to try and hit those weak spots. And if you don't have the right weapon to hit those weak spots, like say you have a pitchfork, and you can only hit a couple people or a couple weak spots, then that's going to be much more challenging. It's going to give you the type of defense that you're looking for. So I think in some ways, we probably think about the combat systems in what we've seen from past games, WoW and Rift and whatever else, where everything is just DPS, and it's the influx and the outgoing ability to do as much damage as possible. and that's not very balanced. It's going to be hard if we do it that way. It's going to be pretty hard to balance this. It's going to look a lot like other games, I think.
Okay, so if you guys are okay with it, we're going to take a pause and let our new person that just joined us introduce themselves.
Hi everybody, I'm Casca Dufamarate. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm not the most combat-oriented person in the world, but I really do enjoy getting the snot beat out of me. One of my favorite games to play in PvP was Age of Conan. It's a lot of fun to just run up on somebody and do all kinds of cool combos to the other person, and then you find out they actually know how to do that better than you. But it was fun in the beginning, but it's still fun. But I don't win a lot. But I do enjoy PvP, and I heard that there's a Hangout today, so I came to see what the team has planned for it, and I can't wait to see what's going on here.
Excellent, right on. Hey, so I'm actually going to move us. Are you guys okay if we move forward?
I want to add something before we move it on.
Go ahead.
My character in the game is going to be basically a cleric or a paladin, something like that. I'll be heavily armored, so I'll be moving slower, and I'll also be casting healing spells and stuff like that. I think that certain spells should be generated from inside and not cost as much mana as like if you were casting it like not much mana. What am I trying to say? The you know what I'm saying with the
Focus.
Yeah, with the focus. There you go. Sorry about that. I need to focus. I think that in a situation like that where you're a cleric, you generate that strength from inside and not from some arcane area.
So basically what you're trying to say is have different schools of magic, not have as big of a penalty due to the lore behind it, such as if your energy comes from the side, you don't get as big of a penalty when it comes to wearing plate or not.
Right, like with your heal spells, if you're a healer, and light spells, you know, stuff like that shouldn't be damaged trying to do it.
So that's a really good point, because if you think about, you mentioned D&D, you know, clerics got their power and their ability to cast spells from deities, and they didn't get them for free. They got them because they followed whatever the deity was telling them to do. So, you know, if they did things that the deity liked and they prayed to him every day and they did all these things, then they got those abilities, and you know, that's something, again, that's missing from games like this, where you have, you know, people that are just casting for the sake of casting. So I think I would personally have no problem with seeing somebody in plate mail and, you know, large weapons casting all day long if they were able to do that because they were following some kind of code and they did all these special things that allowed them to do that, as opposed to just, I'm doing it.
All right, so Amber, do you want to read what you just put in the side panel, or should I?
I was about to say she kind of has to.
Do I really have to say that?
Yeah, you're going to
Dark
have
Star
to.
fails!
Yep.
Pink fizzles!
I did not say fizzle. I said what? We're gonna get our powers from our gods. Dark Star, don't fail me now.
Remember what you said earlier about having a recording? I think this is Dark Star's recording now.
Yeah.
Yep, he now has the ability to live capture that. And by the way, Golem Dragon's quote is almost equally as good. When Dark Star fizzles, Amber turns pink.
Oh God!
So, let's go ahead and move forward on that. The types of magic you're casting can affect your percentage of fizzle based on other outside influences. Also, while they were talking about this, the examples of fizzles were brought up and failures of casting. So level 1 would be a fail to cast, a level 2 would be losing mana, level 3 would be an extended cooldown, level 4 would be, by a cooldown it means like a lockout of the ability. 4 would be losing the reagent you were using to cast it, and level 5 would be actually damaging or taking the effect of the spell on yourself instead of the enemy target. So, go for it.
Basically, putting chaos on every type of magic. I think it's great. Once again, devil's in the details of it, but the idea behind it is great because you can not only give. So if you've got this ability that is uber powerful, it can have a higher fizzle to where you give that not a guaranteed hit chance. And not only is it not a guaranteed hit chance, it has that chance to hurt you. So you're going to think twice before using it. Once again, I'm a big fan of a lot of dynamic in a game because the more choices you give people, the less predictable combat is, the less cookie cutter a build is. The less you'll know what you're going up against. If I know that this person's got spell 1, 2, and 3, I will be ready to counter them. But if they have lots of other things, so having more ways to penalize, I don't want to say penalize, but having more ways to counter an ability gives more abilities that you can put out.
Yeah, and one of the things out of a modern game that recently came out, WildStar, one of the things I loved about playing that is with whether it was DPS or tank or even the healer class, there was no, at least the month that I played and got up to level 30, there was no specific build that was better than another. There was no cookie cutter. You had to go this way. Spamming abilities was actually not fun because using a lot of the other ones and having this dynamic set of goofy skills made the game more fun and made combat more fun. I played the hell out of that month, and if I had money, I would have renewed it in a heartbeat, but unfortunately, I just simply don't.
Okay, so I guess we're going to move on to the next one here, but before we do that, we just had somebody else join us. Averin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, you said my name right. Great. Yeah, I'm Averin Swiftslay, and I'm just here listening to what you guys have to say.
Right on. Feel free to chime in whenever you want. So, next thing up, PvP and how it's affected by the holy trinity of party-based gaming. I call it the holy trinity. I actually took that from somebody else that I was watching in a live stream while they were gaming. But the holy trinity of party-based gaming is you have a guy that takes all the damage. You have his quote-unquote wife who sits next to him in real life saying, "I'll keep you alive, honey." And then you have their 3 friends that live in other places going, "Hey, we get to nuke this stuff, yeah!" So the holy trinity of gaming being the tank, healer, DPS. That's the trinity. So are we going to have the ability to have people pull focus to us, mobs, whatever it may be? How does that affect PvP? How is aggro worked with? And their comment was currently not working on aggro and other tank-based skills, but there are thoughts in the works.
One random thing I'd like to toss in there that I've never really heard too many people ever talk about is this would, if you get those things like those misdirect type attacks where I hit a mob but he thinks it's somebody else type thing, if you put that into PvP, I mean, obviously nobody wants to have a bunch of things jumping them, but using the world to your advantage of making a mob think a person hit him type thing, or also when you come into, one thing people don't talk about a lot is taunts working in PvP, where aggro doesn't necessarily just have to be PvE. It can also be PvP, where having an ability where I walk up to you and I slap you in the face, so you're going to be a little more angry at me rather than the guy in the back. So having some sort of ability to make you hit me, or at least encouraging you to do so.
Well, with that, you could even, maybe not have them force them to attack you, but they do maybe a little bit more damage to you. So it's like, yeah, I could hit him, but I do more damage to you now and is going to have fun, even if it's such a tiny little bit.
Exactly.
So, yes, I agree. The Rustic Lick should be the #1 aggro thing in the game. I think another thing on this that I just want to throw my 2 cents in. I would love to see no tank healer and DPS. This is a classless system. Let's keep the gameplay, not require it. If people want to play that way, great. Put it in to where they can skill themselves accordingly and play that way. But I think the game should be built to where it can be played by yourself, where you don't need to have a healer with you. You don't need to hire a henchman for 99.9% of the game type thing. And I think it'd be great if we could go out and play the way we want. And if we're really good at what we do, we can get through the game.
Well, let's not forget, too, there's going to be the single-player online, single-player offline. So
yeah, but they can solve that with henchmen.
Yeah, but not everyone's going to want to do it. Some like that in adventure games and RPGs where they want to be that larger-than-life hero where I can go and I can do this on my own, whether you be cloth, leather, scale, plate, mixture of the two, any two or even three of those, melee, range, magic, whatever.
Yeah.
That's kind of half the fun of, especially the adventure type, is to be that larger than life story that's going on.
The avatar, the hero. How do you become the hero of the story?
I think one of the bigger questions is not. I think everybody kind of wants a non-Holy Trinity game. The question is, how do you implement that? How do you? Which I mean, obviously there's answers to, but at the same time, it's so. The question wouldn't be necessarily all of us tossing out saying, "I don't want it," but how could they do it?
Yeah, it's near impossible inside of a class-based system. With a classless system, they allow you to take enough abilities to where you can self-heal just enough to where you can survive through most situations. They can make it to where it benefits you to play with people, but as long as you can get through it in your own build, however you have it, I think that's the thing that my comment lies on.
I can give you a great game example that has handled that well, and although I did walk through it in 2 weeks and most people are going, how? I have to admit that the Secret World did wonderful on their deck creation in creating how they did that and handled so that you don't need the Holy Trinity or the whatever Trinity. You can actually do it by yourself, creating how you want to play.
Yeah, that ranks up there as one of the best MMOs that you can play single player and just basically be social but never group with anyone ever.
I'm going to go ahead and break in here and read something from a community person that just messaged it to me. Wrath, hang on, their name is cut off. Wrath Phoenix just messaged me saying, during the time period of early UO, we had the UO style of combat, classless. At the same time era, but later, we had EverQuest. EverQuest is what set the standard for the Holy Trinity. I think for better or worse, the Holy Trinity needs to fade back into obscurity, and let's let Soda return to what we loved about UO combat. Just my own opinion and observations.
So what was the difference between those two games, right? Like, EverQuest was about you're going out to kill a bunch of monsters, and UO, I mean, there's some of that, right? But not a lot, right? Like, it was an open world, it's kind of sandboxy. So, I mean, why does a PvP zone in Soda have to have a bunch of monsters in it that you're going to, kite and aggro and all that nonsense?
I believe it was bosses. To answer your question directly, I believe the reason why that became required is because they changed the type of gaming to where they put boss-like characters, these larger-than-life, even if you're the hero of the story, you can't defeat this boss, which I think is absolutely silly. But you being as Spoonie put it, the Christ figure, you being the hero of the story are going to come up against something that can one-hit you unless you have a tank that can protect you. So that being said, I think that's what introduced it, is the boss fight that was, if I remember right, EverQuest was the game that introduced the unkillable boss that actually almost got killed, so they reset the servers.
Right.
So, not to point out a little funny business, but yeah, I think one of the things that we don't want to see go back to is that requirement of constant boss fights. I don't think it lends to the storyline of being a hero. It doesn't make you a heroine to not be able to do something.
On the bright note, he's already kind of hinted that he doesn't like it because it breaks immersion when you have to kill Joe Schmo 50 times. But wait, I killed him. He's already dead. Why am I killing him again?
Well, because he's the boss. Get to it.
Yeah, Lord British has already stated he doesn't like bosses anyway, so.
But we do have the Lich in the game already.
But
So-
but Lord British is a boss because we want to kill him multiple times over
Oh,
and
look
farm
out.
We
him
want to make pie, right, Andrew?
All right, so
multiple pies.
I just want to throw this out here, just for the people we have in this channel right now. Yay and nay. How many people do we have that want to kill Lord British, and how many people would defend him?
I'll defend him and maybe get some epic rewards from it.
Okay, so defending for selfish desire is
Yeah,
acceptable.
yeah.
You're still defending. Anybody else want to defend?
I
don't
don't
wanna
randomly
eat
kill
him.
people, so I mean, unless Lord British really does something horrible to me in the game, then I wouldn't have any reason to do that.
So out of 10 people, we have 2 defenders, or do we have anybody else that'll defend him?
I'll defend him if there are still only 2. If there are more than 3 defenders, I'll kill him.
Okay, well, I'm going to be a
the whole-
defender. Just to be very forward about it, I would be a defender. So,
Well, I'll bring up the whole entire guard for the Bear Tavern to help out with the defending of the.
no,
Lord.
you can't bring minions. There's no henchmen in this what-if situation. There's these 10 players right here.
Could I put on my Lord British skin and make you guys all chase me while he sneaks up back?
Polymorph. The
If
polymorph
Lord
one
British
that
is
starts off the box.
All right,
I'd
next.
attack him.
So there's
No,
the
I'd
warning. We have Amber Rain, who doesn't want to kill you. She just wants to eat your skin. And then we have everybody else who wants to kill you and 3 people to defend you. Lord British, you definitely need your epic hairbraid protection armor for R8.
Well,
So,
I only need to kill Richard because he breaks the rules of the Cult of Spears. He is all order, and he needs to be therefore disposed of. Just like Star, Pink Star needs to be destroyed because he's chaos.
Quetzalcoatl says that he'll protect him. So there you go. Somebody will protect him. And all right.
Well, I want to kill
I'd
Darkstar
like to
too.
go on to the. I'd like to kind of go on to the next point here. We are an hour and 12 minutes in, so I do want to get through the last few points we have. There are still a few left. We can now cast light on other people, friend and foe. Wow, awesome, great. I wanted to do this for the last couple of releases. I just expected it was going to be in, and it sounded like it was a surprise to them, so I'm glad they figured that out. But what do you guys think? Is there a downside to this? I can think of one, but...
Yes, you can piss off people in town and things like that. So I could see people just being jerks about it, but those who actually use it for its real purpose, it is nothing but benefit.
There should be a dispel ability to take it off. If you maybe have a cooldown, if you get hit with it, you have to wait 3 through 5 seconds before you can dispel it, and then you dispel it, so it's not stuck on you for 20, 30 seconds or whatnot.
That's a
And the
perfect
cooldown-
example of why they need a counter for every spell. If I don't want light cast on me, then I should be able to do something proactively that keeps that
Would
from
that be a
happening.
remove curse?
I'm sorry?
Would that be a remove curse spell, maybe, to counter it?
So I think of a counter as being something that's done prior to it happening. Like, it doesn't help me to have a counter to Fireball if I've already gotten Fireballed, right? I might be able to either interrupt the spell, or I might be able to have some kind of a spell that keeps me from, taking damage from a
Magic
Fireball or
reflection.
getting a light cast on me. So yeah, it could be a number of things, but I mean, it's proactive. It's before it happens. I'm
you
walking
want a bubble of darkness that absorbs at least one light spell that hits you.
Sure.
So when the light comes to you, it just goes poof, and it's out.
And they wasted a reagent for that.
Or hey, how about a mirror and it sends it back at the person? Now they're lit up.
Yeah, that's great too.
Okay, cool. So you guys want the ability to be able to block the light and to dispel the light. But besides that, everybody likes it. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
Well, I like it from this fact that, if you have... I'm going to go back to your Holy Trinity thing. If we have a caster who puts a light spell on their beefy guy in the front, at least he's able to be the other one, and if there are all more stealthy DPS around, at least they don't have the light on them. They can kind of role play their little stealthy roguish types and not be, if they accidentally put light on them, they want to get rid of it. They don't want to be seen. Little things like
I
that.
agree with that. I agree with that totally. For the sneakier type of classes.
So, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 10 more things to go over here, and we're an hour and 15 minutes in. Do we want to slow down, just scrap some of these things, or do we want to get through all the points and topics?
It's time to take out Lord British's stopwatch and give us each a minute, right?
Okay, anybody else have a comment?
I think it would come down to you judging whether they're that big of a deal to talk about or not. We don't know what the 10 points are, so...
Okay, so anybody that doesn't think it's worth talking about, then I'd say hold your comments, and if you think it's worth talking about, then comment on it. And when we get to the last couple of them, then I think the last couple, one of them came from a community person who couldn't make it, that got an invite, but they couldn't make it. I think that you guys will want to spend more time on the last two than most of the ones leading up to it, but who knows? So, do we find a benefit to being able to manually hide our nameplates even outside of PvP? Finding a way to hide who you are if you're planning on starting trouble as a possible moon or stealth type skill. So if you're going to go up and steal from somebody, you don't want to tell them your name ahead of time. In a roleplay environment, you're not going to walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm Duke Violation," and then walk up and say, "Oh, pickpocket." So that nameplate is kind of out of place in that situation. You haven't introduced yourself. In the spirit of the game that they're playing right now, everybody says, guard, and says, "Who are you?" until you tell them your name and you find out who their name is. So why wouldn't we treat players the same?
Probably because it's a technical problem, but I agree. I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, I agree too. I agree on that.
I think
I
it's
agree.
definitely a cool concept, depending on how it got handled. Maybe also having a way to, if you find out where that person lives, for example, if you follow them back home, maybe being able to ask guards, who does this person's house belong to, or who owns this house type idea. You can actually reveal their identities to get revenge on them. But definitely a cool concept of keeping your actual name hidden, not just the nameplate, but your actual name hidden from people.
Yeah, I'm all for that idea too. It's a good one.
Yeah, the nameplate would come up as player in my mind, just like it comes up as guard instead of the guard's name. So, okay, on to the next one here. Currently, we're looking at a target level of 1 to level 50 being no challenge, and a level 45 to 50 will be more closely skilled. Level 30ish and above maybe would have a chance to challenge that level 50 player. The idea behind this is the skill-based contact. When you come into the game, when I first got into this, I thought, well, there aren't any levels. And then as I did more reading, I realized there have to be levels in this game because every time you level, you get more stats and more skills. They said that during a couple different Hangouts. So even though there aren't exactly levels, there is a way that they're going to be increasing what you can carry and what you can wear and how you can do things based on the skills that you're getting each time you quote-unquote level up. Your experience is going to have different bars based on crafting and combat. Possibly there's going to be one for PvP. That is something they haven't touched PvP skills yet, so that's the conversation point that we have right now. Go at it if you have any things. Oh, Olympian example was used by Lord British about how an Olympian boxer could knock somebody out really easy, so go for it.
Yeah, I was looking at the Shroud of the Avatar chat, and somebody brought up the fact that the higher level you are, the faster casting speed you should be able to have.
I think one of the biggest things is, that's one way to balance it when it comes actually down to the balance. If it should be that one could kill a 50. No. Obviously nothing should be about I've spent this much time per se, but at the same time, you just bought the game today. You gotta have some skill into it, yeah. But what makes sense that this guy who doesn't have any ability, I think what he was trying to touch on is the abilities you have will do it. A level 1 is only going to have these 2 abilities where you're not going to be all the way down your skill tree. As you unlock the skills, it's not going to be a stat-based, that as you keep leveling up, you get more stats, where it'd be more skill-based. That's why in level 20 to 30, this is what in my mind, what I imagined him saying at least, is when you got into 20, 30, you could actually have a chance of killing a 50. not because you've gotten more stats, but because you've gotten more abilities to have the skill to face him. Where when you're level 1, you don't have all of your abilities, so even if you have some skill, you don't have an entire list of abilities.
And that's where I think interrupts and things like that come into play, is that'll help a lower level person take out a higher level one, not because of reflex and stuff, but just because of good planning, good timing, being intelligent and strategic, and when to use their skills.
I don't think there should be any passive, I'm 20 levels higher than you, so you can't hit me. If that person is dumb enough to stand there and let a person 20 levels lower than them kill him, it should be allowable. So don't have any passive, I'm higher than you, so you have like a 1% chance to hit me. The things that you unlock from being higher, such as more skills and such, that should be the blocker.
So, Quetzalcoatl actually brought something up on the last question I asked about nameplates. He said if you can't tell somebody's name off the get-go, how would you be able to report hackers? I think that's easily done by anybody. You can right-click on them and hit report, and their avatar ID is what's tied to the report, not the name of the player. So that would be my comment there. Anybody else have something to respond?
That works.
Oh, how do hit points scale as you level? I was wondering if when you're talking about a level 30 attacking a level 50 or whatever, how many more hit points is a level? I mean, do you get a lot of hit points at?
I don't think they've released.
They haven't. They haven't released that information yet. We don't know.
Okay.
So, yeah, the exact numbers are going to be less of what we have right now. Actual information. We just we're a ways away from exact numbers.
I was just mainly curious about proportions.
They made it sound like the difference of an Olympian gladiator to a 5-year-old child from 1 to 50. So I would say take that worth 10 to 20 times the value. I don't know. Take a guess at it. I don't know what the value means. Is it more hit points? Is it more defense? I don't know. But yeah. Are we good to move forward, or do you guys want to go more over that?
I'm good.
Okay, so they're going to be corpse trophies. It would be interesting to see these used in some fashion of crafting.
Bye.
Those two things that were said. My comment on this that I'm going to question for a little bit of conversation here is trophies beyond trophies. That means that it's no longer a trophy. It becomes some sort of a ingredient or reagent. So what would be the acceptable thing to have here to allow people who do not PvP to not miss a required element for either crafting or spellcasting?
One big thing is I don't think at any point that I'm actually, I mean, even though I'd be for it on a game level, I think I'm against having this person's trophy be used in this spell, unless it's a purely cosmetic type thing, maybe, but not an actual in combat spell that's going to give you a unique advantage. I'm all for things such as wearing ears on a necklace type thing, where you can show it off, but not you don't get an advantage from having people's ears and such. So that way the non-PvPers aren't having to go get those ears, if that makes sense.
So anybody else have comments?
Yeah, I think the thing that they talked about was that it was going to be PvP related advantages. So, if I make if I use somebody's body part as a trophy for this special PvP item that I have to make, it requires it's going to be used in PvP, and so PvE, if you're you're not interested in that, then you wouldn't be interested in it anyway. You're not missing out on anything. If the item goes back into the PvE world, I think they said something like it would retain the PvE type stats and it would kind of be segregated.
Okay, so for example...
So, go ahead.
Okay, so for example, maybe you have to turn in so many ears to get your epic PvP sword, which they already said, like, the items won't be any better for PvE, just have a different enhancement or so on and so forth on it. So maybe you have to turn in so many ears to get that sword, where it's better for PvP, doesn't penalize the PvE, so on and so forth, rather than being a reagent for spells in essence, and also maybe turning.
So I'm actually going to jump in on that because that's exactly what it's about to get at. Shroud of the Avatar is supposed to be player created. The entire world that's in front of you is supposed to be player created. So all the items you get off of the merchants that you get from rinse and repeat quests, if possible, will be crafted by players. That's already been said. So what the real issue is here is if it's used outside of cosmetic nature, the crafters that are not PvPers have to craft the items that use them. So crafting matters here. We're not the game in its perfect world conceptually listed how Darkstar and Lord British have said they want to see it. Everything gets made by a player, not generated by the server. So at that point, how do you introduce an element to make a potion or a sword or whatever it may be as a crafter who would actually be making that element into that item? How do you introduce that and not force people into PvP?
Can I toss out a simple one?
I was thinking that. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it. Yours.
Well, since we can kill, I don't know, elves and bandits and things like that, it seems like the things that you would get off of those NPCs could be similar enough so that you wouldn't necessarily have to have ingredients that you had to PvP to get. You could also take out NPCs for that item too.
I like it.
Even a different dynamic of it is, so for a PvPer, you have the different lore behind them, such as being a player killer, being the anti-PKer, so on and so forth. Same can be said for a crafter, where, you know, I am a noble crafter. I'm not using body parts to build my swords. Where if you want a sword that has a unique effect in PvP, such as, like they said, it won't be better in PvE or anything, but it might have a unique little twist to PvP, then you have to find a crafter that is willing to do that. So it'll actually give a dynamic to crafters of, you know, I'm not an evil crafter. I don't use body parts in my this.
Yeah, one of the things with crafting is this is a discovery system. A big part of the goal is to discover all the different patterns. Yeah, we have Soda Wiki, we got Soda Crafting, and these other ones where people are figuring out ones, posting them to make things easier. But let's say, I'm going to go with pie again just because Amber keeps bringing it up. Let's say there are 30 different pie recipes, and let's say 10 of them are meat pie ones. You could have your chicken meat pie, you could have your lamb meat pie, you could have your British or person meat pie. You already start to have variations within one item just because of each player wanting to do something a little bit different in how they discovered a new recipe for themselves. You could have an iron sword, a gold sword, a copper sword, whatever other metals they come up with. You could have a bone sword because someone decided, hey, I'm going to use a femur of such and such creature instead of making a metal one.
Okay, so if you want a bone sword, you could get a Violations bone sword.
Yep.
Or if you don't want to be evil, then it could be a, you know, it could be a troll bone sword.
Exactly. They could take that discovery method that has already grown so much from Minecraft.
Go down for everybody?
Yeah, it said server crashed. Server error.
Yep.
Okay, what just happened there?
I guess we're back in.
Too much necromancy talk.
Server error. I have a feeling it doesn't like anything about bones.
Right. So as I was saying, we could have what Joe was talking, or Violation was talking about, of all this player-created content that could then become part of their crowdsourcing campaign, where people are like, "Hey, here's a new variation on a recipe. What if we do this?" Well, they take maybe a model that Melchior or someone else has done, and then turn that into something else. Well, now we have a new asset for the Unity store, for the game. We're growing not only Unity, but we're growing the game, we're growing the genre, we're growing a new crafting system. You're suddenly expanding something to a whole new level that most games never have seen or considered.
Two things. One, hey Joseph, check your cameraman thing because mine's flashing around to different people as they talk. It might be working now.
It is working now. It's supposed to be like this. It's supposed to flash around.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying it's.
So it's not focusing on me anymore? I can turn on my
Nope.
camera again?
You're good to go, man. All I had to do was have Google crash. If I could just tell Google to crash a little bit more frequently, we'd be good to go.
I never had that
really-
problem. It was always jumping around for me every single time from the
Really?
beginning.
Yeah, but for people who are watching the YouTube, they were just seeing my mug, and while I'm fine with that, I thought it would get old for them, and I wanted them to see you guys, because your facial
okay.
reactions play a lot and kind of our emotions with this.
Yeah. So on that note, violation bone swords. Cool. Great. That's awesome. Okay. PvP resource bonuses and friends play and solo play will be controlled by reverting you back to standard resources if you're not in the open multiplayer mode, the most MMO type mode possible. So you can't be forced into real open PvP if you're not in open play online. Any thoughts? I like that. That was the simple answer by Darkstar. I like the way it was handled. Do you guys have anything to add?
I do like that. You won't be forced into it. The only thing I would have liked to have an answer to is it has been said, and I don't know if they're going to change it up, that the only way some resources may be easier to get a hold of is in the PvP zones. Now, if you were to go into these and you're not in PvP mode, are you still going to be able to get those resources from those zones that would normally be marked PvP if you're actually not in the PvP version?
I'm pretty sure
That was left unanswered.
Yes,
It
they
sounded to me
answered
like
that.
that.
They answered that in a previous Hangout. Those rare ones can still be found in all the other zones. It's just the percentage chance of you finding it is going to be a little bit less. So it's that mathematical game of balancing it. What I like about that is, yes, I can still find that, but this means I can, those days after work where I don't feel like PvP, I just want to go off and do my own little thing in single player or friends only multiplayer. I can go around and farm all the mats that I want for my crafting, and I still have a chance to find those, but I don't have to worry about the open PvP zones in any way.
Yeah, but if you're not open to PvP, then you're not going to be able to go in those zones, right?
Yeah,
no matter
that's
what mode
Right,
you're in.
but you still have the chance of finding it in other zones regardless.
Right.
And
Right.
without having to worry about,
And that's fair.
worry about the ganking aspect of it, which in my mind isn't as big of a deal because I like PvP. But those days I could farm more stuff by not worrying about other people, probably make more money, but still have that chance to find that rare gem, that rare metal, whatever.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's mostly just going to be quantity based. The way that I took that answer was, everything is still going to be available to you. It's just how frequent will you find it and how rich of a vein it is. So I would say everything is simply quantity based only, and not if it's available. And that is directly the way that Darkstar answered it.
Right, like I remember how he had answered it originally. I was just saying, now that we know that you can go into these open PvP zones and not be open, are the resources still, they're still going to be there, but at the same quality or quantity as open, because it's still an open PvP hex.
If you are in open play only or open play online, you will be automatically toggled for PvP. If you're in any, this is the way that he described it, is if you're in open play online, you will automatically be forced into PvP in that PvP zone. If you're in any other mode, if you're in friends play, if you're in single player, you will be, that zone will not be a PvP zone. So you will not be forced into PvP, and it will go back to the default resources, not the increased resources. So that increased one is only in online open play, and you will be forced into PvP upon entering.
So I want to jump in here and just mention that this is actually really kind of cool that I get the chance to tell you guys this if you're watching or in the room and you didn't know about this already, but Player Towns official from Darkstar and other devs, official Player Towns will be able to be flagged as open PvP areas. So we will be able to say, I have a town that if you come in here, you will be in PvP. And awesome. Thank you, team. Thank you for making that official. A lot of us PvPers on the backgrounds that have been going, I'm waiting for you to say yes, are very happy that you said yes. Thank you. We appreciate it. So.
And as a reminder, for those people who want to avoid PvP, you can still visit those towns. Just don't do it in open multiplayer or in friends multiplayer if you don't trust your friends, like Violation and any possible...
Hey, you can party with me anytime as long as you're not a PKer. I will not stab you in the back unless you're a red. If you're a red, watch your back.
Well, doesn't that go contrary to what we just said, though? I mean, if you go into the player-run town and it's PvP only, then don't you have to accept that you're open to PvP to go into it?
Unless, just like we said a moment ago, if you're in the friends play or solo play, it kind of reverts you out of that open PvP mode. At the same time, it changes the resources back to default. I would say that if there's anything that is changed in the player town based on the PvP, that would probably be removed. I doubt there will be anything. Honestly, I think this is just going to be PvP for the sake of PvP. I don't think player towns are going to be, hey, we want to create like 50 different nodes of super rare Raritanium, PvPonium over here in this corner, and we're going to put our best guards next to it so we can just sit there and camp it all day long. Pretty sure the design team's going to turn that one down. But I would,
at the same time, too, what will change in a player town? If you're in there, regardless of mode, there's still going to be resources no matter what. The rarity just changes a little bit. Homes will change. That's not PvP related. Who owns what land? Same thing. None of that ties in the PvP. So whether a town is PvP or not really doesn't matter. You can visit it regardless of what mode. It's just if you're an open multiplayer and the town is flagged such, it's going to let you know, hey, if you joined at this point in this mode, you're going to have to make the tough choice. At least you have other options, though, to still visit without ruining the experience that you, the player, want to have.
Yeah, you're right. I hear you.
All right, so any items can be used, but the penalties will be magnified if your abilities to use them are vastly underprepared. An example was given about not having the strength to carry the plate gear that you're putting on, how it could be magnified by its encumbrance value from maybe 20 to 100 or whatever it may be. So that being said, thoughts? I mean, that's a real big one for PvP right there, to have to skill up into your gear before you can wear the gear to be competitive. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. You're not going to pick up a sword in real life either. And yeah, as a role player, I relate things to real life. You're not going to pick up a sword in real life and expect to be able to, fight with it. You gotta be able. You're not going to be able to put on full armor like Tourniquet does and be able to move around in it. You have to skill up to it. It makes perfect sense.
Can I go ahead and actually toss something? Nicole said it in the chat. If you want to unmute and say it real quick, and then I actually would like to expand on it a little bit.
I believe that if you are adamantly against playing PvP and completely take yourself out of open play and want to play in single play and friends play, I don't think you should be able to visit a PvP town. Those people who made that town wanted that to be a PvP area, and if you don't want to participate in the content in that way, I don't think you should go to that town.
I think this is a topic that definitely needs feedback from a lot of people, because I can see a couple goods and bads of any angle on this. Let's say I buy a town and I want it to be PvP only. If you don't toggle PvP, you can never join it in any mode. The disadvantage is, like they've said, if you're in friends play, you can still see vendors. If you're in single, you can still see vendors and such. If you make it where you have to go PvP, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that traffic. But at the same time, if I buy that town and I want to lose that traffic to try to entice people to join it, I think that is definitely something that, if you're paying that much money for that town, should be your choice. And you're not going to lose. If you do not want to see PvP, you lose nothing from never seeing a player town. It is just people's houses and buildings. There's no core story into it. There's no unique materials in it, and so on and so forth. That's my input on it.
I think anybody should be able to go to your PvP town. Now, before they enter that hex, they should get a warning. This is a PvP town. And you learn which towns have the best protection, so you may not have to worry going to certain towns.
Well, the question is, if you have a PvP town, can somebody go into friends play only or single player only and go into your town and not toggle for PvP? Basically dodge the PvP part of it, but still go into your town and look around. Should that be allowable is, I think, the kind of topic. Because if you're an open play online, you will be forced into PvP.
Well, one of the things, and I put this in one of my recent articles about adventure games, is the fact that you have story-driven game. It's a huge part of it is storytelling. You have the puzzle solving, of which once we get the deck combat system much more fleshed out, that really ties into not only that puzzle solving, but some of the other like dungeon puzzles and other stuff that we know that they're going to be doing. But that other part is the exploration and discovery. We had the map controversy. That wasn't really a controversy. It was all just debate on what's better for the game. But we also have now with PvP, and combat, what's going to be better with this? And big part of PvP is you have, with open PvP, the ability to remove part of that exploration of the world that we're going to be in. Do you really want to remove huge parts of the map? Whether we have tons of player towns or just a few, those are whole areas then that become completely unexplorable. And there could be neat little Easter eggs and other things that the dev team might surprise us with, neat homes that people have already been doing and things like that, that you're just saying, nope, because you don't want anything to do with PvP, screw you, you don't get any of this.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think there is an argument that people can make and say, well, I can't go into a non-PvP town in PvP, so what's good here should be good over there. But really, it's a non-issue. You can't close off sections of your game for spite. It's not going to help the growth of the game. It's not going to help people that just want to explore. It doesn't impact PvP negatively. There's just no real solid reason to do it. Although I do understand the feeling behind it.
Well, I can toss you one idea very simply. My brother and I have talked about, I kill person A. Let's say that, or let's say somebody else kills whoever. Let's say somebody kills my brother. He then loots my brother's item. I then get that item back from him. Blah blah blah. Having a vendor that could resell that. If you put in the option for somebody to go into single player or friends play to dodge that, to dodge coming into our vendors. If we want to put exceptionally rare items for a decent price to lure people in to our PvP, for example, as an idea. If you put in that option of being able to dodge us, then you completely remove that idea. I mean, that is just...
Were they
I'll give you
considering the option of blocking people with your vendors? You could say, hey, I'm not selling to this person for whatever reason, and thus they could show up, they could see your vendor, but there's no interaction level.
We don't know much about vendors for Episode 1. Yeah. I know that that's been talked about for Episode 2 plus, but Episode 1, we don't know much about vendors yet. And I would say at this point, I think from my understanding, you're supposed to be able to have the ability to do that. But I'll tell you what our thought is. If we're in, I'll give you an example of protection detail, and we're helping guard some of the wonderful beer from the Bear Tavern getting transported to Paxlayer, and a group of PKers come up and try to steal our beer. That's a problem. We like our beer. You need to leave our beer alone. We're going to kill you. We're going to take your swords. Then we're going to put them up for triple whatever the ransom was, because you didn't pay the ransom since you were broke and trying to steal beer. And that's going to be in our anti-PK town. And if you want to come try to kill us to get your sword back because you spent 3 months working on getting that sword, come on, get it. You don't have to pay the ransom up front. We've got the buyback vendor. Come on, get it. That was kind of one of the theories we had to let people try to reclaim their swords while not losing out on the bounty system, which we can't really talk about bounty system because they don't have any details on it. But yeah, that was the idea.
Little profit as well, so you kind of stick it to them, but without sticking it to them.
So, okay, here's an idea that maybe will please both parties. Limiting vendors to only be, if you had a specific amount, I don't know how they would do it, because they want the friends play and the single play to be able to use those vendors and such. But maybe a way to limit those vendors to be only an open play, to where if you want to get to that buyback vendor, then you have to be an open play to go to that PvP. So
Yeah,
I know if you do it too much, though, then you stop the economy with.
I would estimate, if I can just put the guess out there based on my own professional business opinion, and I'm not a game designer, I would estimate we will see none of that in Episode 1. I also would estimate that this game has a lot of growing room. They're going to be releasing new content every single month. Episode 1 doesn't mean the game is over. So if you're watching this and you think, oh, well, that's a game breaker, think again. Just because it doesn't make it in Episode 1 doesn't mean it won't make it 2 months after Episode 1 is released. But if I could guess, I would say that type of minute control and detail, sure, it's going to be a lot of fun when and if it gets here. I just would say let's not plan on it for Episode 1 because I think that's an insurmountable offset for our wonderful devs to work on. So, can I move us along? We've got 13 minutes left.
Go.
Just real quick, I just want to touch on that scenario that you guys brought up. I still don't see it because a person that you guys kill for whatever reason, and then they elect not to do the ransom. I mean, they can either do the ransom at a certain price, or they're going to come back and get their sword at either 3 times the price or whatever at a vendor. It just seems like there's a lot of steps in between that logic where I'm not sure that would be such a big issue. Like, if that's the whole reason we left that, nobody that doesn't want a PvP can't come to this town through the other modes. I'm not sure that for the 3 or 4 times maybe that happens in a year, that's going to be enough to be a good example of that. There might be other examples, I haven't thought of them yet, that maybe could do that. But
just for a standing understanding, I am 100% for anybody in single player mode be able to access all the player towns without any restrictions because they're part of the game. I think that the sandbox side of the game is going to be just as important for the gameplay as the storyline part of the game. So, the game isn't going to be item-based, but gear will be an effective piece of the puzzle. So they had talked about how the level 1 players inside of the plate armor were not hurting each other during the ninja fights, the Dev Plus tests that have been going on. So plate is enough of it matters enough to have epic plate on that a level 1 character does almost unnoticeable damage to them. So I guess we've already kind of talked about this a lot. Do we want to spend more time on the difference of levels because we already kind of went over that for the 1 to 50 thing, or are we gonna kind of skim over this one?
I'd vote skim over. It's early in the game and there's not systems to balance, so that's why it's imbalanced.
Cool. Yep. So, friendly fire. Hey, there it is. This is a good one we want to finish toward. I wanted to put these 2 toward the end. Actually, there's 3 here, sorry. Friendly fire, hot topic. Currently for R8, it's in. Keep an eye on it. Enjoy it. Let's see how it changes gameplay. I love that they're putting friendly fire in. It makes it to where you cannot be a mindless zombie and do one of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, go ahead. Talk about it.
I am all for it. In fact, as I brought up in the main room when they were talking about it, I remember one time playing a game where it was, do I hit this button and blow up everyone, or do I save my team and not do it? And of course, friendly fire was in effect, and I killed everyone, and it was great. But I really like friendly fire.
Yep, I agree too. This was something I asked for back in R2 so many months ago, but it's that same thing. It adds to the strategy. I love the ability that if I'm in there with daggers and I flurry around, I might hurt everyone around me, but it could be a lot of fun.
It encourages your team too.
So, is anybody in this chat not for friendly fire? Great, that was easy. Well then, devs that are watching, please keep friendly fire in. We love you for it, and we want it forever. So,
Well, I'll just add to it too. Look at most games that have an online element to their gameplay and to their combat gameplay, especially. Friendly fire is not something we see very much anymore. This helps the game stand out, possibly draw in more backers, keep that money flowing in.
Especially with those AoE type spells such as that root, like we were talking about earlier. It adds a very unique dynamic. If you want to AoE root somebody, and let's say it takes a second to cast, you better tell your healer, hey, I'm casting this root. Get the heck out of it. You know? Otherwise, you kind of defeat the entire purpose of rooting that melee next to him.
The bad guy in the first place. But anyway.
I think it is worth discussing the fact that, friendly fire, there's one big disadvantage to it, and that's, you can use it to grief.
I'd like to. Sorry if I'm interrupting anyone. I'd like to throw in. I mean, this thing about friendly fire. I don't know if anybody's read these books. They were published back in the 90s. It was this lampoon of this sword and sorcery type. I forget the name. Of it. But anyways, in one of the second book, they're going. Or no, it was in the first book. Sorry. The mage, it was in a small room, and he ended up casting a fireball, and he almost killed the entire party. And they're like telling him, "What were you thinking?" I was like, "You don't cast a fireball in a small room." I mean, I like that idea just for the sheer lunacy of it.
Okay, we just had a nice post in the chat here. How awesome would it be if someone used an AoE heal and suddenly healed the melee fighter that was attacking your frontline person?
Choosing the right heal at the right time, otherwise you heal the enemy. That's awesome.
Once again, I think this plays even more into the skill base of it, because you have to pay attention to what skills you're using when not to heal your enemy or hurt your friend, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Richard's not watching.
You want to make sure. Go for it.
Richard's not watching, but I think both Chris and Star would love to see that scenario, and I think they need to try it in-house.
I think that should be a surprise in-house test to make an AoE heal and have Lord British be the healer and question why the bad guys aren't dying.
I love it.
I think that should be an in-house test. We're gonna kind of move along to finish on these last two notes here. So we had the reveal that PvP for player towns is in. Awesome. Removal of /zone and /home types of spells and skills when you're in combat. Possibly removing them from open PvP zones as well. As player tones can now be set for open PvP, we already know that places like, I believe it's called the Hilt. Please don't spoil anything, Gollum. Please. Amber, if you've read it, don't spoil anything. Okay. But there's going to be like places that are just set for combat and struggle, and there's going to be fighting there, and you're going to find a lot of me and my kin there. So that being said, what about that entire area you can't cast your home spell? You have to walk out and get on the overland map before you're able to use your home ability. I wanted to give us a chance to really kind of talk about that a bit.
Well, being as on Overland map, you can't actually do anything. That would mean 2 different zones, which is a good thing, but maybe instead of actually having to leave that hex to go to the Overland map, there was only like one little area where you could cast it. The rest of the hex was open. To what you're saying, that would make a whole lot more sense. The other thing that I wanted to know about that, in the home and the zone, I'm curious. I know that they're going to take them out. I figured they should have taken them out by now already, but I'm hoping, okay, that they do put in some kind of Hearthstone or recall or something, just so that we can get home, say we're far away or something. And, I know it has nothing to do with PvP, but at the same time, it would be nice to have.
Oh, it's
They've hinted at it.
My thought on that would be, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Would be, if you don't have a home to quote unquote recall to, you go to the nearest town. It's non-PvP.
Yeah, actually, I can say that from the Overland map in R7, I was able to go home and zone easily, and I used that in a couple situations where a couple of the zones would not let me use the /home command. So I went to the Overland map and hit home instantly and got home, and my home was a really quick walk from the Overland map in Paxlair. So I was able to go from the south end of the map to the north end of the map pretty quickly. It was nice. But I know that it was able to be done in R7, and I do not think it's been able to be done before R7. But I know I was able to zone to people there as well.
Just saying, home has a very, very, very big impact on PvP, because if I put my home in a central location for PvP and so-and-so gets jumped, I can get back there instantly and be right in the combat rather than taking 20 minutes to traverse the map. And
yeah, it stops the growth of that battle if you can't teleport to your friends. Okay, are we good with talking about this? Do we want to move on to the last one, which I think is kind of cool to talk about a bit, even though it wasn't brought up during the Hangout?
Shoot.
Okay, this comes from one of the guys that wanted to be here for the Hangout but wasn't able to be. He wanted us to hash out structured 1v1 duel system. What do we want to see? How do we want to see it controlled? What do we want to see if we win? Different things like that. So if you guys have been following the forums, a lot of people have a lot of ideas. But yeah, hash it out.
I haven't been following the forums, but I know simply, I think the duel system in and of itself on the game end should be, I'm not talking about the developing end, but from the user interface end of it should be very simple, where there's not any specific reward per se, that it should all be controlled by the two parties partaking in that duel to put up gold or whatever, and it has to be on their person when they do that duel, not something that's in the, at home or this or whatever. And that if they, so that way it puts a gamble into it, whether it be gold or probably just like one single item would be easy enough, not tons of stuff. Otherwise it becomes a developer pain. But just putting one item up, and then the game will forcibly take that from you if you lose and give it to the other person. I mean, I think that would be a cool system, but what's everybody else's thought?
Well, with that, if you do any kind of an anti-system, well, plus you're going to need some sort of accept, yes, no type thing. And already with the dual system, you're already going to need that because you don't want to have people just running up to any Joel on the street going, let's duel, and then start beating the shit out of you, because that already just changes things dramatically.
Beep.
I am going to add into that, however, with a dual system, and I love the anti thing, as I put in there, anti up. They are going to need to somehow put into also the options to refuse all duels, because I cannot tell you how many times it's annoying to go into a game and you get spammed with duel me, duel me, duel me, and you want to stick their spoon up their nose or something.
Yeah, I think that should be something that you can put as a strong suggestion, devs, if you're watching this. I think Episode 1, when it releases, needs to have a way to block duels. I will never have that turned on. I will always accept a duel, but being somebody who absolutely hates people exploiting PvP mechanics because then they always end up getting broken somehow, that's a quick, easy fix. Just let us set a flag that says we don't want a duel, and then anybody I go up and want to duel, it'll tell me, oh, they're not set for duels. Okay, cool, I can go to the next person. You want to duel? And then they say yes or no, So, yeah.
They could do that in the settings menu. Other games have that along with, auto-reject guild invites, auto-reject these. It's just a nice, clean way to program it, to have a player flag it, keep it simple, keep it without...
That one should be set default from the beginning.
I don't know about being set default, because, I mean, there's a lot of people that will like that, especially if they're open PvP. They don't want to have to go in and turn it on or off. If you don't want a PvP, turn it off. Otherwise, you're set to...
All social interactions in an online game should be set default to the social aspect. So you should be default to receive friend requests, to receive... which there's not going to be friend requests here, but to receive guild invites, to receive party invites, and to receive duels. All social aspects of a social game should be turned on by default, and it should take you a second to turn them off.
No,
You know what I mean?
here's the reason why you don't want to do that with duels. Because when you have people that come in new, and they don't know that that's what they're doing, or they get a bunch of invites and they start doing stuff, that has the effect of being that could turn people off from the game immediately. A friend request doesn't do that, but a duel where you're losing stuff could.
Well, the duel in and of itself. Oh, go for it.
I was just going to say that, I've got kids that'll play, and I want them to play online, and I'd much rather have, conservative settings from the beginning than have them, where I have to go in and change them all quick. I understand that a number of people will really love to duel and be interested in this, but I'm not sure that everybody's really going to be into the request. I think they can find that as they get more exposed to the game.
Okay, what about this as a simple solution to that? First time you having a default turned on, when you put an item in, because a duel doesn't have to have a gamble in it. It can be just a duel to duel. It's not that you have to put something in to lose. And that when you put that something in to lose, it pops up a little alert message saying, if you lose this duel, you lose this item, or the gold, whatever. And then the first time you duel somebody on that, tune, that it pops up saying, hey, heads up, there is an option to ignore all duels in this menu. So it's default on, people are aware of it, but right off the bat they know they can lose stuff if they put it in there, and that there's an option to turn it off.
I actually want to say two things. We're out of time. I'll give you guys a quick second to argue with me, but we are out of time. It's been 2 hours. I would say if we're going to go with default duels off, then the simple answer is with no interface pop-ups, so that way it stays immersive. I hate all the user interface stuff. The first time you try to duel somebody, that flag gets taken off automatically. That would be an option to where you have to start the duel to take that off. So does anybody want to say something quick on that before we say goodbye to viewers now and forevermore?
No,
I'd like to. Sorry, I'd like to say, like, I can see both sides of the arguments. Both sides of the argument. It's just like from my experience and the kind of expounding on what Amber said. It's like I remember being in WoW and running through Idiot Shire as I refer to my friends, and getting hit with like 20 different duel requests. I mean, I had an add-on, and it automatically it was just like one person ended up wanting to duel me like 12 times repeatedly, and like this guy would not get a clue. Like that, stuff like that just drives me absolutely bananas.
Yeah, I have to agree with that as well. I hated it every time people would like duel, 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 duel. I hated that because I might be doing something like mining, or I might be doing something like smelting something or making something. I don't have time for that.
Okay, so real quick for the devs, everybody wants a decline all duels option. I don't think whether it's on or off by default is necessarily a game breaker. Something to pay attention to, but even if they had it off by default, as long as I could turn it on, I would not stop playing the game over it. Not a game breaker.
Cool. So left to right, I'll call you out. We're going to say goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching. Go ahead, Amber.
Well, Amber, I'd like to say thanks to everyone for watching. Let me be a part of this, giving my 2 cents, and I'm going to raise a spoon to everyone, and you better watch out because it's coming towards your heads in R8.
Go ahead, Gollum.
Don't have too much. Additional stuff, definitely post on Violations thread on the forums and YouTube in the comments. I know I'm going to be perusing over the next couple days.
Next.
Hey, all right. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you for letting me in here, and looking forward to seeing you on the forums. I got lots of ideas. I just don't always know what's going on.
Hey, I've got it in chat. John, you're next.
Oh, I didn't look at that. Okay, sorry. Well, the biggest thing I'd like to say is thanks for everybody here and also the community for today. PvP is generally a hot topic, and thank you to the devs for bringing it up, letting us talk about it, and giving us input. Also, everybody for actually hashing it out, but in a polite manner. So you guys all right?
Mike?
Nice meeting everybody for the first time, and I just wanted to say don't forget about the gladiator games, towns, and guilds. Get your teams prepped.
And for anybody who didn't notice, that's an epic shield back there with a real-life charge, essentially. So, Mole?
Hey, thanks for having me here. Just want to let everybody know, Mulger Tab, always looking forward for people for PvP and whatnot at the tavern. So come by, have an ale, and do some fights.
Hi, everybody, and goodbye, everybody. Thanks for having such a great hangout. And everybody, please turn on your PvP slider so that you can at least get one easy kill in when you play against me. Thanks.
Silith?
All right, I'd like to say hi and goodbye, and thanks for allowing me to join in. I know I haven't been really in the game, but I mean, once I get a new computer that'll actually run the game, I will certainly be in there with my PvP flag on, because I'm suddenly now, after years of avoiding PvP, finding myself actually thinking I might enjoy it.
I'm just looking forward to seeing R8. I'm glad that the devs had kind of second thoughts on getting PvP involved now versus later, and this has been it's been really cool. I appreciate the time being here.
Yeah, I appreciate the encouragement by Fire Lotus to put this hangout together, and I appreciate any of the devs that took the time to watch and listen to any and all of this. Thank you guys, and everybody who came. Anybody who watched this, this is not going to be a one and done thing. I plan on kind of bringing us back together as a community and hashing this out in a healthy manner. I'm inviting you guys into my home, as messy as it may be, and saying, hey, let's come talk, let's hang out, let's see what we can come up with to help this game become the way we want it to be in a healthy and progressive manner. And boy, what a good time to have this hangout. This hangout of the avatar that came before it was great news, guys, devs. We appreciate it. We'd love to see more stuff like that. Exciting to hear you're going to do it every month. So outside of that, this is Duke Violation. And I'd just like to say on behalf of everybody here, thank you for watching and have a good day.